Hello, everyone. This is Gary Gomes. I'm talking to you from New Bedford, Massachusetts. It's a delight to be here again, and we're going to talk about Vedic astrology and also how it affects you and how it affects the world and what's coming in the upcoming weeks and months. So, you can reach me for readings for lessons at 508 525 0001. I'm available pretty much. Mornings are the best time to get me, but I can schedule according to your convenience. And uh, I think one of the things that we'll be focusing on over the next few months is remedial measures in excuse me, interviews with individuals who I'm in contact with, and also uh, some shorter readings as in addition to this regular program. So I'm kind of excited about what's coming up over the next few months. I am going to set up my new computer. I swear, on my mother's soul, it's just been really rough. I have a birthday coming up this coming week, and I am planning to give myself a new present as part of a birthday present to myself. This isn't a solicitation for gifts or for well wishings. It's just a way of marking an event. Okay, so uh, don't you know? It isn't a plea for recognition. Let's put it that way. So let's move forward. So we do have some really exciting guests coming up. Uh, We're going to be talking with Lolita Donatella Rabach next week. We're going to be talking to Juan Paul Manley, I think, in October, and I do have interviews set up with Alan Anand and some people who are Art Defoe's students, but I have to get that all organized. So again, some interesting things coming up. I'm a Vedic astrology teacher, former president of the Council of Vedic Astrology. I will set up a link to give you the all my background and all the wonderful things I've done in my life. But you're not interested in me. You're interested in how the stars affect you. So let's move on to that. Okay. All right. So this may be a little bit shorter because I'm running up to some time constraints. Um, I'm running up against some time restraints this week that I normally don't have. So if you'll bear with me, we'll get going. By the way, I just want to mention, just for people who are aware, generally a great time to start activities or to break down obstacles. It's this past September 22nd, I believe it was, or September 21st was Ganesh Chaturthi, which is uh, the Hindu god Hindu deva Ganesha's birthday. And so these next few days are really excellent times to start new activities, to break down things that are in your way or obstacles that are in your way, and to move forward with new projects. So, all right, so we still have right now in the chart. Um, we are seeing a lot of activity. So let's just describe the chart in general. Uh, Saturn is aspecting Scorpio as I'm doing this. So Saturn's in Aquarius. It's still moving backwards. It won't be out of that particular position for a few months. And Jupiter is in the same situation. So that's really not going to be a helpful combination. The one thing that will be helpful is in about 12 days, Mercury will enter Virgo, which will make us a lot sharper, a lot smarter, a lot more, much faster thinkers. Okay. Saturn aspect in Mercury tends to either destroy or hurt communications to a certain extent. So certain things, so it's really, and we just got out of a Mercury retrograde last week. Mercury retrogrades do have what I would call an after effect. Western astrologers use a more specific term than I'm using, but there's an after effect in Mercury retrogrades in which you feel the results of a Mercury retrograde about 3 weeks after the planet's gone direct again. And Venus retrograde is doing the same thing. I think Venus retrograde, when that ended, it allowed us to get a lot more truth about relationships and a lot more accurate information about relationships. So we're getting more logical, more in control of our emotions. I think that's important for most people because when a person is hurt, which happened a lot when Venus was retrograde in August and into early September, a lot of people that I was talking to were experiencing hurt feelings or reversals in relationships. So the major thing to keep in mind when we're looking at these things is that we are still in kind of a deceit pattern in this chart. Even Mercury entering Virgo will not take us out of that. And we do have to be careful about what people tell us. So people will be discouraging right now, or they'll negate efforts at reform. They'll essentially say there's nothing wrong. You know, what are you complaining about? And in about a couple of weeks, they'll actively lie. I mean, and again, I'm not saying, I'm not accusing anybody of bad behavior. That's not the point. It just makes it a lot easier to lie, especially in the press, especially in the media, especially in government, when Sun, Mars, and Mercury are together. And that will happen within about 2 weeks' time. The other thing you have right now is Saturn's aspecting Jupiter. So there is this sort of like, I would call it a certain stubbornness about holding on to dogmas, even if the dogmas are based upon misrepresentation of facts or cover-ups, or even flat out and out twisting of dogma. And again, like I said, this is something I don't find is true on either the left or the right. I'm going to deliberately mention this case coming up. Russell Brand, the commentator, there were a couple of cases that came up as a result of a New York Times investigation, and New York Times does have a political standpoint. I'm not going um, to make it pretty. It's a liberal or left leaning publication. It has been for many years. But the New York Times also has there's a really neat book out called The Great Lady Winked. I can't remember the author's name, but it talks about the times that the New York Times just got stories incredibly wrong, or they just manufactured a position. The most damning of them was its support of Hitler prior to World War II, or its masking of Hitler of Germany's efforts prior to World War II. I hope that reference doesn't get me banned from YouTube. But I think so. Again, just because you're hearing it from a reputable source doesn't make the source reputable. Okay. It doesn't mean the New York Times is lying. That's not the idea. But I think one of the things we have to be careful of, and this is in connection with any news media organization, it doesn't matter if it's Fox, it doesn't matter if it's um, any of the major networks, it doesn't matter if it's MSNBC, it doesn't matter if it's PBS. There is always, and this is something I learned back in journalism school, there is always a kind of viewpoint that these organizations filter their stories through. So this is, and again, I don't want to seem to be too um, biased against media. I use media. I like media. I certainly have my own biases. Okay, so I'm very clear about that. But um, this came out when Saturn was aspecting Jupiter. Saturn was aspecting Mercury. Is something from the past. I'm not saying this individual is innocent or guilty. But I think it's a weaponization of um, a way of controlling somebody you don't like, and I tend to get a little bit concerned about that. So um, again, this isn't necessarily just a situation that should concern people who are fans of a particular individual one way or the other. It should concern us all, okay? Because um, we, we've seen similar things done against civil rights groups, against left-leaning individuals. So it depends really on um, it's a perspective of who controls power, who controls authority. So let me get off the political side of this thing right now. And the Saturn Jupiter aspect will still give us that dogmatic presentation until really around December. I'm not seeing inflation slowing down anytime soon, and it's mainly because of Saturn of Mars aspecting Jupiter. Mars rules minerals, and Saturn also rules access to resources. So I think we're not going to see that change anytime soon. One thing that I think is interesting is the actors' strike. It looks like it'll continue. I think for a few months, to be honest with you. That's one of the things, and the strike, the UAW strike. The UAW strike may not continue as long. They may reach an agreement about that within about a month. But I think I think these things are interesting in the fact that we're having Saturn is throwing what I would call a reverse aspect on Venus, which has to do with entertainment and also with cars, with conveyances. So I think this is just kind of an interesting situation we're seeing. And also, we have a lot of countries in the world that are suffering economically, suffering in terms of natural resources, suffering in terms of fires, um, and hopefully, um, within by the end of the year, you'll see a lot of that stuff calm down and a lot of the panic go away. But you'll still see some residual effects of that all the way into April, I think, because of uh, Jupiter, Saturn's aspect on Jupiter. Okay, but currently, the big issues I'm concerned about are disruption in trade. Um, there's a possibility of conflict. I don't think major war, just because of the Mars K2 conjunction. And Mars is at 22 degrees. K2 is at 056 minutes. So Mars K2 conjunction will happen within about a month or so. And I think it'll be interesting to see what happens then. But I think you'll see some hits to the real estate markets, and there'll be real estate issues around the world. Okay. Um, and I think you'll also see a certain amount of trade panic happening. So again, nothing to get really all that concerned about. I would caution people not to get into arguments or not to get into like really, really strong disagreements with people because Mars aspecting Jupiter tends to make us say things quickly that we'll regret later on. Uh, I know that that's happened to me already. Um, and it may have happened in this broadcast. I don't know. But I think um, I think one of the things to keep in mind is the Sun Mars combination is kind of an angry combination, and the Mars K2 combination could indicate some domestic violence or national violence in a variety of countries around the world. Um, in I would say September through October. So I'm hoping that doesn't happen. Um, and I'm hoping there won't be any military conflicts. But in terms of like major wars, I don't think that's in the cards for quite a few years. And we might even be able to avoid that. Okay. So again, there's nothing inevitable about a horoscope. Okay. We can make decisions right now, which will essentially alter the future. And I think that's within our control as human beings to do that. So let's go to the actual horoscopes for the month or for the week, excuse me, and we'll look at Aries. Aries has Saturn aspecting it, so a lot of people with sun, moon, or rising sign in Aries, and this is a sidereal zodiac. That means essentially that every sign is moved back almost a whole sign. So people born right now aren't in Libra or they're not about to enter Libra. They're still squarely in Virgo until around October 15th. And the same is true for every other sign. So signs don't change until around the middle of the following month from when they change in Western astrology. So Aries doesn't start March 23rd. It starts April 15th through May 15th. So people who are born, if you know your moon sign, you have to adjust your moon sign. If you know your rising sign, if your rising sign is greater than or lesser than 24 degrees of a sign, or your moon sign is less than 24 degrees of a sign, chances are your rising or moon sign is back in the previous sign or right on the borderline. Okay. So 23 degrees is safe, but 24 degrees is somewhere between the two. That's the borderline. That's the difference in degree. So Jupiter's in the first house for Aries, Sun, Moon, rising sign, along with Rahu. So again, there's this kind of frustration with Rahu and Jupiter. Jupiter's moving backwards, so a lot of the luck or a lot of the financial gains you thought you realized are kind of limited. They're restricted. They're obligations that you have to meet, maybe to the government, maybe to your boss. Saturn's aspecting your first house. This tends to give quite a few problems with friendships. So friends will seem to be a little bit untrustworthy. They'll seem to be a little bit downplaying or discouraging. Gains will be a little bit disappointing. Work will be hard. But with the moon in the ninth house, you'll start to see some changes in this sign, especially in home life this month. Venus is in the fourth. Relationship life has improved quite a bit. It'll get better in a few weeks, but it'll seem a little bit stable or a little bit stuck. Mars is in the sixth house, Lord of the first is in the sixth. So you'll have to be careful about illnesses, but you'll also have to be careful about accidents with this combination. And this sign should look out very carefully for car accidents over the next few weeks. Okay? So that's just a warning. Every sign should be careful about automobile accidents or cuts in general. But over the next few weeks, this is particularly true. So the moon does indicate a change of luck or a new direction. People are feeling a little bit more empowered, and that's a good thing. For a Taurus, this would be May 15th to June 15th for sun sign. Jupiter's in the 12th house. So gains, so we're spending a lot of money on unnecessary things, or maybe on hidden requests from the wife or the husband or the boyfriend or girlfriend or whoever your significant other is. And K2's in the sixth house for the sign. Again, has to be careful about accidents over the next few weeks in particular. But with this particular sign over here, Mercury's in the fourth house. There'll be a lot of gains from home life, but there'll be a lot of work connected with that. And there'll also be some control over expenditures because Saturn's aspect Jupiter. That's generally a good thing. The Mars-Sun conjunction in the fifth house will give some problems with kids. K2 in the sixth, we've already spoken about that. Moon is in the eighth house, which is kind of interesting because the eighth house is a house of hidden investigation. So this sign will be more interested in what's going on behind the scenes than usual, and will focus a lot of attention on that this week. Saturn's in the ninth house, and I'm sorry, in the 10th house, excuse me, and that gives a lot of pressure at work. Saturn's also aspecting the seventh house, so relationship partners may seem a little bit depressed or anxious or even a little bit depressed. Excuse me, let me fix that. For Gemini, Gemini has Venus in the second house, so this sign will actually, again, like I said, be more logical about emotions, but we'll still feel a little bit depressed until for about another 12 days, after which time it will really go on kind of a revenge campaign and get back at a lot of people who've heard it. Mars is aspecting the seventh house, so it's really feeling kind of a damage from relationship partners or damage in home life or emotional damage, and definitely being taken advantage of by people that are surrounding this sign. So this is June 15th to July 15th. K2's in the second house, is in the fifth house, so children will seem to be a little bit detached or a little bit more selfish than normal. Seventh house, change in relationship status. So this sign will be very committed to changing its relationship life, changing, maybe even angry or destructive towards relationships, wanting to change relationship status or maybe even get out. Saturn's in the ninth house. That does indicate a lot of hard work, maybe even some minor legal problems. But career life generally looks good for this particular sign, and you'll start to see some improvements in career life. Let me put this phone a little bit further away from the computer. And yeah, so it should be overall a positive time for Gemini. But again, a little bit of anger, a little bit more anger than normal, and a little bit more aggression than normal. So Gemini has been going through a tough time over the past few months. It's had a lot of disappointments in its life. That's going to change, but it will really only change by the sign getting angry. And that'll happen within, like I said, within 2 weeks at the outside. Um, the other thing is you have, um, oh, by the way, I'm gonna something. Mars will not be the ability to lie will be only for a short period of time, maybe around 2 days, because the Mars Mercury conjunction is not going to last all that long. Um, so so again, keep that in mind. So we're not going to be faced with like 2 months of repeated lies and defamation and things that can't be addressed. It's really going to happen rather quickly, and maybe around. Um, you'll probably see some relief in early October. Okay, so at least in that aspect of life. Okay. The other thing is for so Gemini should show some financial gains. It should do actually well financially. It should show some increased control and even a certain amount of coldness in relationship matters. So that's actually it's going to be better for the sign for the next couple of months, I think. For Cancer, if Venus is in the first house, this is July 7th, July 15th, roughly through August 15th. Mercury's in the second house, and there'll be a strong desire nature for security at home, certainty about emotional issues, and I think to a certain extent you'll have um, a more peaceful life. Saturn is glancing backwards at Capricorn, so there is some regret over relationships perhaps that have ended or even events in your life that have passed. But I think you'll actually see, to a certain extent, um, a more uh, a more realistic assessment of your life and your life pattern over the next few months. So that's actually a good thing, and that'll happen when Venus is set to enter Cancer. Excuse my head. Is set to enter Leo in about by the end of this coming week. So that will make things a little bit more realistic or a little bit less emotional or and more practical. There will be, I think, a lot more emphasis on developing things creatively, loving your work, and also, at least from what I can see from this particular chart, um, more focus on fame and career success. So I think it's actually going to start to be a good week for, and also some good financial gains for the signs starting in about a week and a half. For Leo, Leo has Mercury in the first house, aspected by Saturn. That's generally a tough combination. So this sign is going to feel kind of frustrated. It wants to do things, it wants to make money, but it has obligations to the home life. And you'll also see, but luck is generally good for the sign. So if you apply yourself, if you put your best foot forward, you'll actually improve. The moon's in the fifth house. That's good for increased luck, especially from a distance. And Venus is the lord of the third house. So a lot of the barriers you've been facing will tend to go away, especially career wise. So that's good. I'm not going to say it's going to be an easy week. That would be untrue. But you'll find towards the end of the week you're able to accomplish a lot more of what you want to accomplish. So you'll have Venus and Mercury together in this sign within about 6 days, and that will make you cheer up and be a little bit more positive about the future. Again, this sign has to watch out for being a little bit too aggressive, a little bit too mean, just because of the Sun-Mars conjunction in the second house. That's one of the dangers for the sign. For Virgo, Sun and Mars are in the first house. A lot of desire, a lot of ambition, interest in occult or metaphysical subjects. It's very strong for the sign, but there's a lot of focus on career life for this sign, and the feeling the career life has been essentially taken out of your hands, or you can't make it through within about 2 weeks. All the obstacles in your career will be gone. Those will be, or they'll be manageable. Let's put it that way. Also, with Venus and Mercury in the 12th house, there's a greater ability to save money. There's a greater ability to manage money. There will be some unexpected expenses, though. I do have to advise you of that, and some costs will go up. But within about a month, though, you'll start to normalize a bit, and you will actually get some deals or some breaks either from the government or through sales with this Venus Mercury conjunction, especially if you're looking for luxury or home items. K2's in the second house. Again, there's this fogginess about financial future with K2 in the second house. And maybe there'll even be a consideration of cashing in real estate or things you don't need over the next couple of weeks. I wouldn't be rash about that. I would consider the market carefully, and I would consider what you have to do, what you have to the things you need. I would consider the things you need, but I would keep a really strong eye on property for everybody over the next few weeks, because this does give some dangerous combination. The Mars K2 conjunction does give some um, issues with property. Okay. Um, Moon is in the fourth house, so this indicates a change in mood, a willingness to try new things, at least at home. Saturn's aspecting Jupiter, so we have the sixth house lord aspecting the fourth house lord. So again, there will be some unexpected expenses connected with education and with home life. Venus, though, is in the 11th house. That's a really good placement for the sign. So there will be rewards, financial gains for people with sun, moon, or rising sign in Virgo. Libra. Libra's been in kind of a vice over the past couple of years. That's going to end within about a month's time, within about a month to 2 months' time, as Virgo goes into as K2 goes into Virgo, excuse me. K2 and Rahu kind of like being in Virgo. It's one of their more favorite signs. K2 in Libra is bad for trade. It's bad for this particular sign because this sign tends to weigh a lot of things. But as soon as it's made a decision, if K2's in the same sign, it's going to find blocks or problems with communication, or not the right tools available for it to move forward. So a lot of those blocks will be gone within about a month, but they'll still persist. The only thing I tell the sign to be careful about is there's a lot of sexual energy with Mars moving into Libra, and that will make it easier for you to get entangled with people who are not appropriate relationship partners, or it might even make it easy to have affairs if you're so inclined, because the sex drive will be rather strong. And also the drive for money will be rather strong. The drive for relationships, for partnerships, will also be strong. So these can supplant that bad judgment and actually help you gain financially over the next few weeks. So the moon is in the third house, strong desire for meaningful work, strong desire for increased labor access, and Saturn's in the fifth house, which is very good for applied and academic pursuits. So you'll be particularly inventive. Jupiter's in the seventh house. You'll have a lot of potential relationship partners. Now, again, if you're single, I wouldn't move in that direction until after December. Okay. And even then, Saturn aspecting Jupiter, it'll make you more careful about relationships. Okay. But this is generally, Venus is in the first house. There's a lot of focus on career for this particular sign right now, and a lot of focus on gains. But confidence is a bit low and anger is a bit high. So just be mindful of those things. And again, as for Leo, Virgo, and Libra, be careful what you say in particular. Aries, Pisces, and Taurus as well. It can make enemies. It can make you regret things you've said. So you have to be really, really careful about what you say. Just don't say the first thing that pops into your mind. Take a breath, pause, and think about it. Okay. I mean, it's good because it makes you assertive. It makes the sign assertive, which sometimes it is not. But there's a fine line between being assertive and being insulting uh, or impolite. Okay, and um, I think that there's a risk that we can just like attack people without really thinking that clearly, and that will cause some resentments, which will last for a while. Scorpio is the next sign we're going to look at. Scorpio's ruler is in the 11th house, which is good for gains. The Lord, and it's good for gains from career. The Lord of the seventh house, which is career partners, is in the ninth house. It's generally a good placement. The ninth house is kind of a mixed house for Scorpio rising, but it's still good. It will give good supervisors. Supervisors will give you the ability to move forward. Moon is in the second house. The Lord of the ninth is in the second house. So again, the Lord of the ninth is considered to be a difficult planet, but with this combination, it will help you bring in more money. Saturn is aspecting Mercury, so there'll be a lot of focus on career. Some resistance from home, though. Jupiter and Rahu are in the sixth house, and that's very good for career advancement and for competitiveness. So you'll be able to charm people more easily. So this generally looks like a good week for Scorpio. I think one of the things, the only flaw I look out for is unnecessary expense or unexpected expense. But basically, it's not really a bad week for Scorpio. For Sagittarius, the moon is in the first house. Relatively destructive. Is it in? No, it's in Purusharada nakshatra. It's moved past its destructive stage and it's moved into its acquisitive stage in the sign. So this is the victory after the war. Okay, so so essentially Saturn is so essentially this means a change or kind of a rebirth for the sign. You actually accomplish something you set out to do. Saturn is in the third house. He gives the sign a lot of ambition, especially for financial gains. Saturn's aspecting Jupiter. This is a good combination for luck, and it'll come from unexpected places, maybe from people from other countries. And for Mercury over here in the ninth house, good for financial gains. Mars and Sun are together in the 10th house, extremely good for career for Sagittarius. About the only thing I would still continue to say is you still have to watch out for friends taking advantage of you. That's a definite problem for Sagittarius during this particular month and over the next month or so. really until about the end of November. That's when you're in the clear and you can trust your friends again. For for Capricorn has Saturn in the second house. A lot of focus on financial gains, a lot of focus on financial rise, and Jupiter's in the fourth house. Saturn, so there's a lot of responsibility, a lot of frustration connected with home. Some aspects of your home you want fixed and you just can't get it done. And that'll unfortunately continue for a little while. Venus is in the sixth house, makes this sign. Venus is in the seventh house, excuse me, gives this sign good relationship potential. Mercury's in the eighth house, good for occult or metaphysical investigations, but also good for just general research. And I research what the government's planning to do. That will affect your wealth in a great deal over the next few months. And I think, excuse me, I'm trying to get my raspiness under control here. And I think one of the things that you have with this combination is the government will start to put in some policies which may cost you some money. So this isn't to put a negative light on the government or things like taxes. These could be incidental things, not really very significant, and they'll probably pass within about a month's time. Um, so Capricorn actually doesn't have that bad a month or that bad a week ahead. And actually, it'll get some career gains out of this as well. Aquarius has Saturn in the first house. That's what's called a Sasha Yoga, SASA. And Sasha Yogas are good for command. They're good for leadership. It's retrograde, so you're leading about things you probably from the past. Jupiter's in uh, the third house. It's okay to take a contrarian position when Jupiter's in the third house. And people will actually look at you and say, gee, I never thought of that. Excuse me. Hello.
Karen,
Yeah.
how you doing?
Okay, I'm doing the show, then I'm going to do the reading, Gene.
You what?
I'm doing the show, then I'm going to do the reading.
Okay, I made you some scrambled eggs, okay?
All right, thank you very much. I'll be up.
Well, then after you're done with the reading?
Yeah, around noontime.
Okay, bye.
Bye. All right. All right. All right. So let's get back to this, and I will need to take a drink of water. My apologies. I give you what no other astrologer gives you. I give you real life. I promise I'll become a better editor. Saturn is, so we have this Sasha Yoga. So it's okay to take a contrarian position, especially because Jupiter's retrograde right now. So actually, contrarian positions will be viewed rather favorably. So that means going against the system, going against the establishment, going against expected norms. I rather like this. And without going into my particular chart, I rather like this because I like Jupiter retrograde. I just think it's really phenomenal because you have a chance to learn things over and over and over again. But and you get a lot of chances if Jupiter's retrograde. But I think one of the things here is, excuse me, Jupiter's aspecting Mercury for this sign. So even though relationship life may seem a little bit tight or controlled, it'll still be basically good. Sorry about that. It'll still be basically good for career life. Venus is in the sixth house. It does focus. It does give certain obstacles that'll ameliorate or lessen quite a bit within about a week or so. when Venus changes signs and goes to the seventh house. And you'll have this kind of a Raj Yoga, what they call Raj Yoga or kingly combination for Aquarius, and also um, Libra rising, in which Saturn, Mercury, and Venus will all be in mutual aspect to each other, and they're all good planets for both signs. So even though there'll be some aggression, there'll be some difficulty in getting work done, you'll still be able to get it done, and you'll actually attain a rather high status over the next couple of weeks because of this combination. The other thing is we have Mars in the eighth house, so you do have to watch out for relationship partners taking advantage of you or causing some kind of difficulty in your life. K2's in the ninth house. Some unexpected barriers with luck. A lot of things don't go smoothly, but if you persevere, why am I having problems with that word? If you persevere, you will make it through. Okay, your luck will improve. Mars is in the eighth house. I think as ruler of the 10th house, so that tends to give some increased financial benefit, but it'll come through inheritances or through property. Okay. 12th house, we don't have any planets except Pluto in the 12th house. Moon is in the 11th house. It does indicate some short-term gains, especially over the next few days. For Pisces, let's move on to our last sign in the zodiac. For Pisces, Rahu and Jupiter are in the second house, a lot of focus on financial gains. Mercury, Lord of the seventh, is in the sixth. That does indicate some fights or arguments with relationship partners. And there's an exchange of lords between the Sun and Mercury, which I had mentioned before. But again, that sort of like increases the communication pattern, the propensity for lying in relationship partners. So that pattern will go away, like I said, relatively soon. It won't be very long lived, but it's still there. Finally, or not finally, Venus is in the fifth house. That's a very good placement for Pisces because Venus is exalted in Pisces. It's not a negative planet for this rising sign, contrary to what you may read. In Vedic astrology texts, it's actually a rather good sign, a rather good planet. And this will give romantic involvements, potential romantic involvements. But again, make sure you're not being used. That's the only thing I ask. Make sure that you check out the person. Relationships, even business partnerships, are a little bit dicey over the next few months. And just make sure you get together with somebody you can trust. Okay. Make sure that you know their strengths and weaknesses. And I think all those things things should work out for you. Opposition from relationship partners is a short-lived phenomenon, only lasting maybe about a week. Moon is in the 10th house, maybe a change in career for the sign. And Saturn is, or a new kind of a career. Saturn's in the 12th, a lot of expenses, as is true for all signs. Let's go to the time and space chart so we can see what's happening around the world. And let's see now. All right, so we have a moon line around Hawaii and a sun line right next to Hawaii and a Mercury line around Hawaii. Now, there have been allegations that expressed in different media that the fires in Mount there's been kind of a land grab in Hawaii, and Rahu's really close to the Mars line over here, which is really far away from Hawaii. But I think we are going to see a kind of a land grab in Hawaii, and that's unfortunate. I just, um, so just be aware of that. And Rahu is close to the west coast of the United States and the west coast of Canada. And you'll actually be seeing a bit of a land grab in and even Alaska in the news relatively soon, maybe flooding or maybe some kind of water incident up there. But as we go down through the western United States and into Canada, there's some scandal that's roughly approaching California, Oregon, and Washington, and it looks like it's going to be connected with natural resources and also with science. So Venus Jupiter line running right through um, Arizona and Utah and California is conjoining right on the border of Mexico. So, aware that there are problems in the border with Mexico, this will present some kind of I think, some kind of a humanitarian crisis down there, which will kind of explode over the next uh, month or so. Um, and I'm just trying to move the lines out of the way so there's not much happening um, and over here. So that's why I'm putting it down here. Unless you're really, really interested in the Antarctic. And there's also, I have to look a little closer, excuse my head. That's a Saturn line running through Texas, actually all the way through central Canada, all the way down through um, Texas, the Gulf region, and Oklahoma, and up north in South Dakota, Kansas. So again, there will be some economic shortfalls in that area. Um, Nicaragua and Central America tend to continue to have suffering, so I can understand why people want to get out of there. That's definitely an understandable situation. Um, there's a Mercury line running through Michigan. Um, looks like Illinois, Indiana, Kentucky, Tennessee, and down through Georgia and a little bit into Florida, down through Cuba into Panama and down into Ecuador, Peru, and Chile, and down into Argentina, southernmost Argentina and Tierra del Fuego. So we can expect to see some kinds of um, news coming out of those regions, and especially about hardships, financial hardships, and to a lesser extent, politics, because Mercury is in a political sign right now. It's in a rulership sign, so we're going to see, I think, threats to the leadership of that. We're going to be hearing about threats to the leadership of those parts of the world. Um, Haiti, again, uh, there are either activities occurring currently in Haiti. There's a sun line going through uh, Guyana, Brazil, and encompassing Argentina, uh, Bolivia, influencing Paraguay and Uruguay, and also a Mars line. So we could see some violence in Brazil. We could see some governmental scandal in down near Rio de Janeiro, and also even up into Iceland. And I've named that before. Iceland is kind of vulnerable to explosions or ice storms lately. Not ice storms, but more like water catastrophes, maybe eruptions. Mali and West Africa are prone to floods, uh, and Ivory Coast, down by the Ivory Coast, and we have an ascending line of Jupiter coming up through Portugal, England, Norway, and Mercury. And you're going to be hearing a lot about Europe lately. That's this entire section right here. Um, looks like it's in a bit of a crisis, mainly because of health issues in this line down through Saudi Arabia, arguments over oil and actually soil. It's a moon line, so this will be kind of like a center of activity. So oil prices will affect governments, will affect communications. This is going from east to west in this part of the world. But the focus of this is in Saudi Arabia and down into Yemen and down into Sudan. So, and down in South Africa, you'll see some governmental crises in the southern African countries overall, and a lot of news about those, especially over here, especially in between Zimbabwe and South Africa, and a little bit into. Um, but I'm expecting some more violence, definitely in the Ukraine, even some violence in Saudi Arabia and Ethiopia. Um, there's a moon line running straight through here, so this will be a very public line. This is Iran. Iran's going to be in the news a lot over the next few weeks, and India is going to be suffering from some flooding and also from some government um, mismanagement. This is also coming up through Afghanistan and Pakistan and into central Russia. Finally, as we go towards the right, um, so I'm seeing flooding in India, flooding even in Western China, although that may seem unlikely. And over here, a Saturn line. China is still not coming out of recovery. Saturn, Mercury. Yeah, China's in trouble. Uh, Thailand and Cambodia are in a little bit less trouble, and we'll be hearing a lot about Vietnam in the news as well in terms of trade issues. And the moon is passing over Korea. It's being intercepted to a certain extent, um, by Saturn. So we'll be hearing some disappointing financial news from Philippines. And finally, Mars is vulnerable to earthquakes or vulnerable to violence, as is um, uh, New Guinea and even Australia down here. There'll be some governmental scandal connected with Australia. Finally, New Zealand. Finally, our friends in New Zealand. Jupiter line passing through here. Again, some government scandal, but they're trying to fix it. And they probably will within a couple of weeks. So that's it for this week on another amazing journey into astrology. It's been my pleasure being here. I hope to see you next week. If you wouldn't mind, please subscribe, like, and comment. I'd appreciate it. Thank you very much for viewing, and have a wonderful week. I love you all. Bye-bye, everyone.